I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
And I'm Chris Susie.
And we are here with another Q&A for you. You guys had quite a few questions, some very similar. Apparently, 28 Days has y'all fiending for questions. We won't go too in-depth in that, just to clarify when you're watching this, if that's the only reason why you're watching this episode. Hopefully not. But we have not watched 28 Days yet. It has been October. It has been a very busy month for us. So now that we're going into November, we will have time to watch things. And I guess we need to binge watch all of that so that we can answer all of y'all's questions.
Maybe we should do an episode on shows, on ghost hunting shows, the documentary style ghost shows. I've actually been on a couple of them. So, I was just on the latest Ghost Brothers.
Oh, Ghost Brothers, yeah.
Brothers. They went to the Moon River Brewery.
Oh, no way, you were on that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was this weekend, wasn't it?
I actually don't know when these things come out. Like, I get told by other people, I saw you on the show. And I was like, oh, right.
Yeah. Well, Ghost Brothers at least were in town this week for Halloween.
Oh, awesome. Mm-hmm. Love the Ghost Brothers. They're one of my favorite.
I would
ghost hunting shows.
I would agree with that. They're like probably the most solid to not necessarily
because they have humor that is very natural. It's not forced humor. They seem to be having a good time.
Yes,
and they also get scared, which is a big component to me. Is I'm all for being brave, but if you get scared, if something scary happens, interact.
Absolutely.
I actually don't know who they are because I'm too busy producing this show.
That's fair.
That is fair.
That is fair.
I just can't. I can't watch anything. I'm so done. Like throughout the day, I'm doing so much with this show, just trying to contact people and get, ghosty stuff happening and planning the next episodes and all that. That like at the end of the day, I'm like, I just want to watch something completely different.
That is fair. That is fair. Absolutely.
Yeah, like Bachelor in Paradise. Like that's
Love
what
Bachelor
Maddie
in
and I like.
Paradise.
We grab a bottle of wine, we grab our pups, we turn on Bachelor in Paradise and or Bachelor or Bachelorette, and we just soak in the awfulness that is.
And the absurdity that those shows are.
Amazing. Oh man. So anyway, all right. Let's go ahead and get started with the Q&A. But before we do, I would like to thank our newest patrons. Thank you, Arcadia Eklund, Lindsay Williams, Lauren Bonaker, Miranda Wareham, Andrew Maudsley, and Stephanie Bauer. We really, really appreciate y'all. Yes. Seriously.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and we have lots and lots of stuff coming for the Para Junkies.
Yes, thank you for being a Para Junkie, and welcome to the junkie side.
Yes, welcome to the Para. That's what I was just saying, what we needed to talk about real fast. I am currently working on a secret Para Junkie merch store.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to have Parajunkie only merch. You're going to need to access it with a cool password. It's going to be pretty dope. So
yes, secret things.
Secret yes, and everything will be closer to wholesale than regular.
Show your pride.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be good prices on those if you want some Parajunkie only merch. Okay, here we go. Taylor and Luke. We've had questions from Taylor and Luke before.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Hi, guys. What are your thoughts / reviews about the documentary Demon House? I kept yelling at Zach Baggins to stop bringing people to the house, LOL.
That is a fascinating documentary. I am deeply intrigued by it. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. So one of the most interesting aspects of it, I think, though, is there's a lot of buildup. The house itself does seem to have a lot of troubling history to it. if I'm not mistaken, because there might be a different cut of it out there as well, like a director's cut or something. But at the height of this documentary, Zach Baggins locked inside by himself in the demon house. Something just runs right past a door, and there is no mention of it, no discussion of it, no talk of it. And I'm like, I wish they spent a little more time on the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they acknowledge that it happened, but they spend very little time, like, investigating or doing anything like that.
Yeah.
So, interestingly enough, that house was demolished. And if you go to Zach Baggins' Paranormal Museum in Las Vegas, the basement of the museum actually has a lot of the house pieces and like areas of the house that were noted to be very paranormally, charged.
So I typically stick away from things that Zach Baggins tends to produce. Just not his biggest fan in the entire world. Just because I like a more serious approach, if you will, to paranormal, and I like to hear theory, and I want less hokiness.
I feel like he led a charge of being highly aggressive and antagonistic in investigation. I think a lot of people took on being antagonistic during investigation. I do not in any way, shape, or form recommend or condone being antagonistic when doing a paranormal investigation. What you put in is usually what you get out. That is, if you go in open and if you go in trying to sincerely communicate versus going in, like you're going to fight the ghost. One of the most peculiar ways is to show up and be like, "Hey, bro, let's go."
Like a bar fight.
Yeah, like a bar fight. Puff up your chest and take on a spirit. It was very disheartening because I want to say that after Zach Baggins became very popular, I saw more and more of it, and privately, like people who would come on ghost hunts got very into the idea of you gotta spur the spirits into action.
Sure.
And I was like, well, that doesn't seem like you're getting an honest interaction, because if you show up aggressive anywhere, getting aggression back is not an indication of what the spirit's like.
Exactly.
You show up to a very, kind and peaceful person's house and just start shoving on them. Their interaction and reaction is not going to be the sincere, interaction of the person.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I will say he has gathered a lot of really interesting evidence, throughout his time. And the museum, I actually had a guest on my tour about a week ago who was like a Zach Baggins super fan. Like this guy came on the tour with a Zach Baggins shirt on. He was like, I love him. And I was like, ooh, okay. And so, so yeah, he told me though about how he recently went to the museum, and like you said, out in Las Vegas, and he had a really weird interaction. So he was with, his tour guide was Zach Baggins' girlfriend. I guess she gives tours there.
Yeah.
And she had mentioned some kind of like song or something like that they heard come out of this record player or whatever. And the guy said that every time they would turn on the radio, that song would start playing. Every single time they got into an Uber, the song was playing. They got home, the radio wasn't even turned on, but the song would pop up. And I was like, very bizarre though.
That is super bizarre.
So it's like,
that is communication right there.
Absolutely. So I'm like, well, apparently something really liked you and followed you home. It was like, get me out of this place. But it's, but
well, and that museum is very overpowering because it is so chock full of just item after item after item. They have the Dybbuk box there. They've got an incredibly haunted doll there. They've got pieces of a house there. And they have like Ed Gein's crock pot.
Oh.
That they suggest he rendered human flesh.
Yeah.
Nice.
So there's a lot of really weird. Because there's a lot of serial killer stuff, a lot of
Yeah.
So would a crock pot tenderize a leg in like 3 hours? Would you say? Or
well, I say crock pot, but I meant like an actual crock.
Oh, okay. I see.
Like a cast iron.
Gotcha. I was picturing
witch's cauldron.
Gotcha. I was picturing the ones that you can get at Walmart.
Yeah, no. I realize now that I'm talking about slow roasting.
Yeah, slow roasting limbs.
I think it's fair to say that our show will never be picked up by Zach Baggins if he hears any of the episodes where we talk about him. So
I personally don't have anything against him because he built an industry.
Sure.
I'm not an advocate, but I understand, that's business. That's a solid business
and
model.
It works for him.
Yeah.
And it knocked it out of the park because at the time that he arrived on the scene, what we were getting, and again, the step before that was the Ghost Hunters, TAPS, where that's an amazingly innovative and wondrous thing, but it was very much an imitatable thing. And then you saw a lot of knockoffs and you saw a lot of people trying to attempt the same thing, telling the same stories, doing the same things.
Sure.
And so here comes a guy who had kind of that bad boy rock star vibe.
Yes.
It's like way too much moose and leather jacket, and he shows up and he yells at ghosts.
Yes.
And that was different. It caught on. He has super fans, and so while I am again not an advocate, I respect the path. And in the years, as the years have gone on, because like I watched like the first couple of seasons and found myself in that weird boat of, I don't like this process. I don't like the process that I go through. Skip 15 years now?
It's
and watching the more, and there is a kinder, gentler touch, because my guess is the longer he's been at it, the more of that criticism of people being like, don't do that. What are you doing? What are you thinking? And so I think he's learned more about hunting ghosts and interacting over the years. Although, again, he stands as an adversary to ghost hunters who are attempting a sincere contact. And I still stand by it. I think Zach Baggins himself is haunted. That he has a ghost specifically that interacts with him wherever he goes. Not only does it always call his name out,
on the payroll.
Yeah,
right?
That goes on the
Seriously.
payroll.
And that's just it. If you're receiving scratches, if you're getting your name called, if you're having the same experience in every place you go, the question isn't, wow, I'm able to draw out the ghosts of every place. It's, you got a ghost on your back.
That's your next script.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's your next script.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No, seriously, like
Ghost on the
that's
payroll.
like you could make a film, like we could all make a film about the ghost hunter that not pays a ghost, but like sells his soul to some demon to latch on.
I do have a script. I'm a screenwriter, for those of you who don't know. I do have a script in which a paranormal investigator murdered someone in a house, and then 10 years later comes back to the house hoping to stir that spirit, because he knows what happened there. He knows very intimately the details of it.
That's
so
clever.
he's showing up hoping that his presence will catch the ghost, because he's that dedicated to the idea of catching a ghost. He decided to make a ghost.
Sure.
He decided to murder someone, torture and murder them in a place, and then go and investigate the place.
Wow.
Cool. All right, here we go. Angel Dewada, what up? How you doing? It's me again. We're always happy. We're always happy to have
Yay!
you. Thanks for such a great podcast. What are your opinions on Ed and Lorraine Warren?
I really like Ed and Lorraine. I think they pioneered the way of like a paranormal couple of sorts. I'm especially a fan of Lorraine because I think her abilities were so unique in the way that she was able to walk into a space and almost feel and see exactly what happened there. That's so rare. Ed was definitely more of the theorist, and he came from it a bit of a more religious stance. So I don't find that I pull a lot from their methods, but I do respect all that they did in the flipping the coin, from Zach Bagans, where it's like they were very sincere about genuinely trying to figure out what happened here, why the spirit is the way it is, trying to make a place safe again. And they cared a lot about families as well and trying to help families. So I like Ed and Lorraine. I think they're pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think they stand as, the four bearers of modern paranormal investigation. And yeah, I actually spoke to Lorraine Warren in 96, I think. And it was a wonderful
course you
conversation.
did.
She's a very warm person. She's very, she was so set. She understood things so specifically that it wasn't even a question of whether or not she was guessing or because there's a lot of guesswork to this. But if you have a strong faith and you're using that faith to back up what you sense, it becomes very solid. She was very solid. And when she spoke, you just instantly felt that what she was saying was the truth. But at the same time, I think that we do have romanticized versions of Ed and Lorraine, and our exposure to Ed and Lorraine is through a lot of different glasses. Because over the years, I've spoken to people who've had altercations with Ed and Lorraine,
sure,
who have had issues with them, and so it's definitely for what they stand for and what they promoted. I absolutely adore Ed and Lorraine Warren and the books that you can read on them and from them. Wonderfully intricate observations of the paranormal universe. But I have had. There was a guy who basically said he punched Ed to get him out of the house because, and he dismissed the Warrens entirely from his premises because he felt that they were interfering with how his family was dealing with and coping with the thing. Because you have to imagine somebody shows up and starts really barking orders and telling you how to do something when you have a family member in distress. That can be very friction filled. As a matter of fact, that was the Conjuring house. Mm-hmm. That actually happened in the Conjuring house. So, like, the father of that family is on record stating that he was not a fan of the Warrens, and the story as told by the Warrens was not how it played out. And
wow,
I almost think that there is a book coming out from the daughter of that family, of the Conjuring family, trying to access the truth about the house, because the story as it is very heavily Bathsheba and the horror there. But apparently the family actually had a long-standing relationship with the ghost of the house that they felt was poorly represented.
You're telling me that Hollywood over-exaggerated something for money?
I know, right?
Well, actually, the Warrens did.
Oh. I thought you were saying the movie over-exaggerated it.
Well, the movies did, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it was also because it was the accounts from the Warrens' point of view.
Oh.
Gotcha.
Because the Warrens did write their story about their experience there, and that's how the Conjuring story came about. It just isn't the same. It's a point of view issue. And I don't know necessarily to believe one way or the other. It's just knowing that not everybody's going to be on the heavy Christian boat of dealing with spirits, and then having someone take a very specific and narrow view of how to deal with something or how to, you can run into issue. Yeah. I am a fan of Ed Lorraine, hands down, but I do know that they haven't always been the heroes that we've kind of grown to associate them as.
And I think it's important to note that because of their ability to be proclaimed as these heroes, we do tend to forget that they were human beings.
They were people. Yeah, absolutely. They were people through and through, and they did amazing work, and they did amazing cataloging of some of the most diabolical and frightening situations.
Yeah.
And it comes down to that whole, there are two sides to every story, and you want to be as open as possible to what there is. I think the information that you can get from Ed and Lorraine Warren is invaluable, especially if you're interested in the paranormal. But at the same time, it's a thin line when you deal with faith. It's a thin line when you deal with how to deal with spirits that are restless or spirits that are violent or spirits. And they seem to be very focused on helping people who are in dire need. They show up when it's demonic. They show up when it's dangerous.
Yep. Yeah. And I definitely, could see people getting into confrontations with them, because if you read anything that Ed Lorraine would, or Ed Warren would say, it was very staunchly religious. You know, like all of the interviews he would do. So if you're not as much of a Christian as he was, I could totally see him.
Oh, absolutely.
And
that's kind of the point is
pushy.
He was, and you kind of need that to do the kind of work that they were doing. You know, you have to have a kind of infallible faith, especially if you're going to perform any form of exorcism. You have to be beyond doubt. And being beyond doubt does put you at odds with people who have doubts.
Sure.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to the next question. But before we do, I just wanted to let everyone know that we are going to be having a live stream for the Gribble House Tier Parajunkies and the St. Julian Street Parajunkies tomorrow. That's Sunday, November 6th.
Yep.
Is it the 6th? 6th at 10 a.m. So if y'all want to get in on that, go ahead and jump on that tier, and we're going to be posting a Google Chat link probably about half an hour beforehand on the actual Patreon. Also, our Parajunkie exclusive episode this week is going to be, we had a Parajunkie actually hit me up and go, I want to hear more about Madison talk about seeing dead people. So that is what that Parajunkie exclusive episode is going to be. So if you want to hear more about that, we're going for that. All right, and next question. Hey, it's our homie Anne-Marie Morales, and she asks, I know y'all have said that a human spirit, I'm going to restart that question. I know y'all have said that a human spirit will not want to tell you things about your future, but what about tarot or spirit guides? Is that different?
Absolutely. Well, and I've said this a couple times before, where like when you're doing tarot or you're communicating with your spirit guides and stuff, they're usually giving you advice of like where you are in your life right now. And they're like, this is something we would recommend that you do, you know, or this is something you need to work on. Because a lot of times when you really get into tarot and you do readings on yourself, it's usually your tarot cards roasting you, saying like, you need to work on yourself. Like you are holding yourself back in this way, or you're, you know, so close to getting this one thing that you're working towards, but you need to do this and this and this. And that's usually what your spirit guides and because that's usually who I at least pull through to do tarot and whatnot. That's what they're doing. They're not telling you like in 20 years you're going to be rich and famous or whatever, or in 5 years you're going to be in a horrible accident. It's never that when you're reading tarot. I mean, there are plenty of people who like to say that they can see things like that, where they're like, oh, you're going to have a horrible accident. I see this in your cards or whatever. But I really think a lot of that comes from the idea of Hollywood, like
or money,
or money. You know,
they want money, and they want to give them. Oh, you're going to be married to a very successful blah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's interesting because technically, we're let's say we're all spiders, and we're spinning a web. Okay, we are responsible for the individual strand of our lives. It spins this way. When you're looking at tarot or being told these things, what's happening is they are forecasting the direction that you are spinning, and they can see other things that are spinning. They can see the blonde woman who is spinning your way, and they can say, oh, you know what? A blonde woman is going to come into your life, because they know that that's the path that you are spinning, the direction you can spin, which also means that all the side lines of the web, all these little pieces that can be in your path are registrable, not because they're the future, but because they too are traveling towards a destination. And that's how you get things like avoid this, because they see a probable collapse in the web or a probable strand that's not going to be strong enough. That's why they can say, pay attention to this person that might be coming into your life, or this career choice that might be coming. Because what's really happening is you're not seeing the future. You're seeing a path laid out before you. And that path is pushing against all the other fates that are intertwined. And so when you look at the cards are saying this is the path you're on, and I can see that all these other paths are converging. So it isn't really telling you the future, it's telling you probabilities of outcomes based on this web of existence.
And what you're doing. But you still have, like, I think I've answered this a couple weeks ago or a couple episodes ago, but, you know, like, you still have free will. You can choose, like, to ignore those, you know, pieces of advice. Because think of it as like you're talking to a family member and they're like, hey, I've noticed these things that you do. If you keep doing these things, this might happen to you, because they can see from the outside, like Chris said. But you can choose to ignore that family member and be like, that's a bunch of nonsense or whatever. But it's not, you know, like a spirit telling you, like, definitive sort of events. And that's the thing that we really...
But it can come off like that.
Exactly.
It could feel that way, because it could be, you know, especially dependent on who is doing the reading and who is doing the communicating. They can see a positive outcome and literally be like, you have to say yes to this, you know, or if this happens, say yes, or take the job there, or do these things, because in interpretation, it looks like the future.
Yeah.
In interpretation, it looks like, and it increases that probability. So what you're really doing is advanced mathematics, quantum mathematics. You are utilizing a lot more information than you personally have to determine paths that you can take. So yeah, and you can choose. It's always a choice, because the future, even in the great book of life, when they say all things are known, all things happen, and you're like, well, then why would I ever make a choice? It's like, well, those choices may be predestined in that one sense, but the truth of the matter is you're still living your life. You still have free will. Our concept of time is messed up. So, you know, just know that when you're exchanging something, some piece of you for some knowledge that is supposed to be clouded,
sure,
that becomes, you know, an issue, and it lives in a more diabolical place when you really start to think about someone who is enticing you with the future versus you going to a place to interpret the path that you're on and the choices you have ahead of you.
Yeah.
All right. And let's go ahead and move on. Skiz69 asks, do you have any ghost stories about the Vernonburg area?
That's a good question.
What Vernonburg area?
I think they're referring to, like, the Savannah.
That's what I was about to say. So
Vernonburg, is there
like
a
the one
Vernonburg,
over,
Savannah?
Well, yeah,
Savannah,
like,
Georgia. Yeah,
like Georgetown area.
Georgetown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when they were building Georgetown, there was this old house out there, and we used to call it the witch house, because we all believed and, you know, local legend was that the witch house was this, you know, house. And some people's stories, it was an old slave woman who settled down right on the property of the plantation and built her little house and lived out there for a while. There was a long time where if you go down, they tore it down to build those houses, that housing community out there. So me and a group of friends went out there to see it before they tore it down, and it was a harrowing night of strange sounds and strange sensations. And when we got to the house, it definitely felt like doom and gloom. But one of the weirdest things is there is a road right when you get down towards Georgetown that just kind of like peels off right along 17. You can go down and you go kind of past all where people are living, and it just almost turns into a dirt road, and then you come to this giant fence. And while we were there, it was like 3:00 in the morning. We were getting lost because at the time there were no roads. There were, you know, it was just like piles of dirt, and we were leaving the house. So it was between 3 and 4 in the morning. We came down that road, came to this big fence, and I was like, oh, well, you can't go any further. But before we could turn around, 3 pickup trucks, like one on one side of the fence and 2 from we don't know where, came up down upon us, and we just like drove off. And so we don't know what was there, but there's something that was very, very guarded, because we obviously tripped some kind of alarm or something. But that whole area, is steeped with stories, but the story that I know of that area was that there was a witch house, quote unquote witch house out there, and we never got anything more than the idea that there was this old house that was in the middle of the woods too. I should point out that was all like wooded area. It was not traversable by any means. It was not easy to get to the house. Even when they were building construction, the road that went to the construction site, we had to like leave and walk through the woods a bit to get to the house. So yeah, there is a story of an old witch who lived out there. And again, no information about the witch, or if it was really a witch, but it was the kind of story that people, there's an old house in the woods and a witch lives there, and if you go to the house and knock on the door in the midnight, blah blah blah. So yeah, it's pretty rich, but it did lend us to the stories. If you listen to the Mark McCullough episode, we actually talk.
That was Tuesday's episode, last Tuesday's episode.
We actually talk about the plantation that was on his property and how I believed that the story that he was telling was in Georgetown, in that area, because that was how it was conveyed to me, the story of a plantation that got burned down. But then the story actually that again, these are all words of mouth stories. These are not printed. People didn't keep heavy ledgers around this time.
Yeah.
But the story was that a plantation owner, in pure spite, decided to kill his slaves rather than free them, set his own plantation on fire so that the Yanks wouldn't get the pleasure of burning down his house. And that's the story. And again, sensational, no real regards to whether it's true or not, but to hear Mark have a historian come out and say that there was a plantation on the spot that burned down, in the Civil War era, it's like, oh, that's very interesting, because I've heard that story. That's the kind of story that people hold inside and tell casually. Oh, this area used to be a huge plantation. This area used to have, because a lot of people forget that Savannah, the city, was kind of like where the rich people would come to be away from the plantations. There were no plantations in Savannah proper. Savannah, the town, was, we're living by the river and we're all fancy. And we have these mansions and things like that. So these mansions that are in Savannah were not the plantation houses. It's
all around.
It's further out. And the further out you go, the more, because like all the way down to Midway, Georgia, there are many plantations, but most of them are lost to time. Because after the Civil War, this whole region and area, they cleaned up their act. They were quick to deny their slave holdings. They were quick to crook the books. They were quick to suggest that they were more up and up than they were. And so you see there's just the sensation of the lost plantations of this area and this region. But I think good historians, of course, know. But to the casual researcher, it's very hard to learn about these plantations.
Absolutely.
So problem is that actually I Googled it, and Vernonburg, although that was very interesting about Georgetown, Vernonburg's actually Windsor Forest. It's like east of Windsor Forest. Yeah, it's a small area.
Oh, down by Coffee Bluff.
I have a great story about Coffee Bluff.
Well, there you go.
So
All right,
there you go.
tell it.
Okay, so
There you go, Skiz 69.
Yeah, so Coffee Bluff is another area that used to have a lot of plantations and things like that. It's kind of a little bit wooded as you're going out there, but I forget who the person was that told me this story, but I think it was somebody that I do like aerial with, but they live out in Coffee Bluff, and they live in a normal house, like a normal new constructed house, but they were having paranormal experiences. And I have this air to me that a lot of times people see me and they're like, you sound like, or you would enjoy a good ghost story. And I'm like, yes, I would. And so she came up to me and she was like, I have to tell you about my house. I was like, okay, tell me about your house. And she was like, I didn't think it would be haunted because, it was built in like 2015 or something like that. Right. Shouldn't have, had anything going on. I'm like, well, that's wrong, but continue. And then basically she kept telling me how like when they first moved in, weird things started happening. It started out small with just like cabinets opening and like doors, sounding like they were shutting, footsteps and things like that. But then her daughter started talking to someone that wasn't there. And progressively, this relationship got really like, codependent, where she didn't want to leave unless, the friend could come with her, or she got really defensive over the friend that nobody else could see. And apparently the daughter started waking up with bruises on her and scratches on her.
Nope.
And what they found out is that the house had been built on top of a cemetery that was knocked down.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a slave cemetery. So it probably was on a plantation property at some point.
Well, and now knowing that we're talking about Vernonburg, which must be that area by the Vernon River.
That's it. That's the one.
Which makes, because those are all affluent houses. Those are like doctors' houses. They're big, like that, the row facing that river. And so, yeah, that was plantation area. So that was area of high distress, high, emotional issues. And people forget too that slaves were very rarely given and afforded the opportunity to have proper burials. A lot of times they were not, it's not like they got a day off when a loved one died. Sometimes it'd be after the day was over of grueling work, they were given, take care of the body. Sure. And so, and if they did have markers, they were usually wood. It's not like they were given, any resources to mark graves correctly. And given what culture they may have come from, their burial practices may have been, foreign to us in sight. We would not have noted it. So throughout that area would be peppered,
Sure.
Because we talk about slave burial grounds, but the truth of the matter is a lot of plantation owners would not, deem it necessary.
Exactly.
They truly had this concept of the slaves not being human beings. And, that led to a lot of graves that were never marked and a lot of graves that were never properly, associated with the rituals of death of any given culture. Yep. So yeah, we are, and along the river, it's fascinating because, again, now we see these things as the high point of living on the river in these big, beautiful houses, but they're really built on top of probably slaves, the slaves' quarters and the things like that, because the main houses would have been not overlooking the river, but inland, overlooking the land.
Yeah. And that's not to say that it could have been like the spirit of a slave or something like that. It very possibly could have just been the fact that it's a desecration of graves. Mm-hmm. It sometimes just thins that veil. Cemeteries tend to have a thin veil to begin with.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes things just get through and you got to send them on back. So
when you start talking about scratches being a very clear indication of demonic presence, usually, mm-hmm. like scratches are 9 times out of 10, the situation is you're dealing with a non-human entity, and you see the 3. Like when you see 3 scratch lines, that is that most common first indicator of, we're probably not dealing with something to know to put for. You're dealing with something that is, and some people say that the 3 scratches are a sort of a mockery of the mm-hmm. Holy Trinity, or a mockery of the 3 a.m., the 3 p.m. There's a lot of reasons why people think that when a demon tries to scratch, they're using 3 claws instead of 4, mm-hmm. which is typical of animals, and a human being would be 5 or 4.
I knew a cat named Scratches. That's what I have to give to this podcast.
Did she live out in Vernonburg?
No, it was actually in Georgetown. Scratches would scratch people, obviously.
What?
Yeah, but never scratched me. Always rubbed up against my leg. I don't know. I'm not saying I was anything special, but
you were chosen.
Yeah,
you were chosen by Scratches.
Yep.
Spare this one.
That's all I can give to this podcast, other than what I do behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I think worth noting is whenever we talk about like graves that are unmarked, or graves that have not, or bodies that have not been properly, you may not be dealing with the bodies in the grave, but the fact that the energy is there for other entities to be drawn to.
Exactly.
We're not saying that the body in the ground is angry at you. We're saying that you're on an area where the opportunistic spirits that arrive have a place to be, because Many people believe that the rituals of death are, in fact, to seal and protect the area.
For sure. All right, moving on. I managed a Burger King. A kid passed out during a shift because of a heart issue. When in the recovery position, I saw a white cloud exhaled from her. Ideas?
Oh.
Whoa.
Wow.
That is
Okay.
quite an experience. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I'm trying to process that. Basically,
Wow.
what I would feel like, I mean, I feel like I would need more details about like
I was gonna say,
exactly what happened.
What happened next, and what was the condition? Is she all right?
Yes. Hopefully she's all right. But usually when I hear that like any kind of like essence was shown outside of the body, it makes me feel like it could have been like a near-death experience where almost like this, you could have possibly seen the soul starting to leave the body, or just like that energy of the person leaving the body. But because I'm hoping that this child is still okay, maybe it was just not enough to fully finish leaving the meat flesh suit that we live in.
That is a solid analysis, definitely. No, and it's worth noting that in just about every culture in the world, we think of vitality and we think of life, and breath is the like, even when you talk about like chi in the Asian culture, it is very breath centric, because when you really think about the stages of necessity in life, you can live weeks without food, you can live days without water.
Yeah.
You can only live minutes without air. If you deprive a person of air, you are so that should give you an indication of how vital it is to the condition of being alive. And so when you see an exhalation that is clouded over in a type of crisis period, there's a good chance that what you're seeing is the distress of the vitality of the person being represented. And if you're seeing it, you yourself might be gifted.
Yeah.
Because that is not a normal thing for somebody to see. It's possible that, and if you have never felt it before or since, it might just be this latent ability you have to witness, spiritual interaction, because that is
It's a very interesting ability.
Right. Because that is, and people can live their whole lives without ever seeing someone die or seeing someone in that level of distress. So they may never know that they have the ability to witness or bear witness to a spirit in turmoil.
Do you think it had anything to do with the kid being a child?
I mean, so think about it this way. Imagine like how orbs are, how orbs can be different colors. All they are is just like a little ball of energy. But a lot of times you can distinguish that particular energy by the color, or even auras. Auras have different colors to identify different energies that they give off. So usually when you see white, it's a very pure energy, at least in the form of auras and orbs in that realm.
Maybe that's why kid.
Well, yeah, I mean, children are always going to be the purest form of energy.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, there's always some crazy ones every once in a while, but some bad seeds every once in a while. But most of the time, 9 out of 10 times, you're going to have a child that's going to have a very pure aura and pure energy to them. So that's another reason kind of why I lean towards the side of like, it could have just been a little bit of that soul leaving, or even just their energy leaving the body.
Yeah, because there's a lot of legends of breath stealers. Even the concept that cats come in to steal the baby's breath.
Scratches.
And there's
Or a Dementor.
That's pretty common. There's many versions of the creature that comes and takes the breath out of your lungs to live and survive. Even the hag, to a certain degree.
The hag I was about to
has
mention.
that that notion that she's taking your life's breath. So maybe there was some invisible force pulling life out of this kid.
That would be very frightening. Not in the Burger King.
Yeah,
Not in the Burger King.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. And iced lemon vanilla asks.
That sounds delicious.
I know.
Okay.
Now I'm like,
Give some a treat.
Yes.
Right. Ice Lemon Vanilla asks, can ghosts talk to other ghosts? If so, can they work together to make rules with others? And more importantly, are ghosts saying mean things about me?
Am I being bullied by ghosts behind my back?
Oh gosh, that's funny.
That is funny.
That is, that's a great question, because I am of the belief that it is as difficult for a ghost to see another ghost as it is for us to see a ghost. And so it depends on the planes in which they are operating and divulging. But you do oftentimes hear ghosts refer to the other spirits. They'll often talk about, like, if you get into an EVP session, or if you are using the spirit box, they will oftentimes discuss how many spirits are around them. So that does suggest that they can see and communicate. But the scariest thing I've ever heard was during an EVP session, and it was just the sentence, "We like to watch."
Ew.
And it was so bizarre, because all I could think was how boring existence as a ghost would be, and how if they had access to everything you do in a given day, start wearing swim trunks to take a shower. It's one of those things, because humans are voyeuristic. That's just a fact. And if you're given access to the most private and intimate moments of a person's life, and you got nothing else to do, so
Like Big Brother.
it's like Big Brother. So,
show.
So as far as like talking smack about you, yeah, probably. They probably are.
Well, yeah, I mean,
think so.
Well, think about like
They may love you and they'll praise you as well. But if you do something stupid, they're going to talk smack.
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about, how human beings are in real life. Like, people love to gossip. Gossip is everyone's favorite thing to do most of the time. And so, of course, when you got all of eternity to do it, might as well.
Right. And you got to figure that at some point they've seen everything. So,
Yeah.
So try to be unique,
Yeah,
entertaining, give them something to talk about.
absolutely. Have a conversation with your house ghosts, or, it's that's what I do.
All right. Next one. Paramutant asks,
Ooh.
I've binged 28 Days Haunted. Have you seen it? How does someone become a demonologist, and do they have to be clairvoyant or a medium?
Okay. We haven't seen it yet. We discussed that at the beginning of the show.
I feel like this question's answerable.
But it's
That's
super
why
answerable.
I left it in there. So
demonology is the study of demons. You do not need to be clairvoyant to do that. There are so many. You can actually just go online and buy yourself a demonology certificate, which I think a lot of people do.
yeah,
And there are courses. There are courses in demonology, but really all demonology is the study of demons. And you don't necessarily have to be certified, because I can't think of anything outside of like the Catholic Church that can confer a meaningful demonology, degree of any type. But if you're looking like purely from an academic point of view, it is the cataloging and naming of demons. I took a demonology course in college.
Of course you did.
And I actually went to seminary in hopes of pursuing that lifestyle.
What?
Yes, but I was quickly turned away from it, because the priests kind of were like, "You're not called." I wasn't, and it's true, I was not called. Meaning I could not enter the priesthood with good conscience, because my goal was not to administer the faith. And
yeah.
You just wanted to talk about demons.
well, I just wanted more
Father
access.
Chris.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted more access to information that was very difficult to find. Because you can buy
Absolutely.
demonology books, you can buy these things, but I believe I was probably 100% wrong. I was a kid. In the instance that I was thinking that there was so much suppressed information about demons and this was before the internet, this was before anything like that. There was no way for me to do. There was a course, I think, in Duke University that I explored to try to get into, but ultimately seminary made the most sense, because they deal with it. They openly talk about it, and it is a thing. However, I was not cut out for it.
You were the only person I know that would literally alter their life to become like just you're the only person that I know in my life that would like say like I'm never gonna be married, not having sexual relations with anybody. I'm going to become a priest solely off of the fact I want to learn what the Catholic Church got to say about some demons.
Well,
what's behind that wall?
It's safe to assume that upon graduating, I would have left.
Yes. Yes.
But putting that aside, putting that whole bit aside, the whole notion aside, it is the study, and it does not require you to know or have clairvoyance, because when you get that ology behind it, it is the study of.
Yes.
So you're studying demons. You don't have to experience them. You don't even have to believe in them, to become a demonologist, because it is a fascinating subset of faith and belief and a fascinating subset of human lore that involves our attempts at identifying evil, placing it outside of the self and into entities that serve very specific purposes. So in the case of demonology, you're oftentimes looking at a long list of jobs, the 7 deadly sins. You're looking at demons that adhere to certain types of temptation and condemnation. So it's a weird title, and you'll see it. People oftentimes show up and like, this is noted demonologist so-and-so says. It means that they've studied the subject.
So books.
Oh yeah.
It's just books. Like I feel like
yeah.
books are like the number one way to become a demonologist is just study it, because books have the juice.
I know. Luckily,
they have the juice.
Indeed, the internet does have an endless array of resources that are about cataloging and naming and knowing, and then patterns of behavior and things like that. Because when we start talking about demons in a paranormal research situation, that's a heightened thing, and demonologists can help identify trends and identify the common beliefs and the core beliefs that surround this kind of thing. But ultimately, when you're face to face, it's weird.
Yeah.
It's such a weird question now. Now that I think about it, I'm like, yeah, because a demonologist doesn't necessarily have the ability to go toe to toe against a demon. Just because you know about a demon, and just because you know about the methods used to thwart demons, does not necessarily mean that you have the skill set or the ability to do so. Because we talked earlier about Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed was like one of the only non-priest, civilians, to be given and granted permission from the Catholic Church to perform exorcisms.
Sure. I feel like you're gonna laugh, Madison, because you know how I am, but I feel like fighting a demon is a lot like hunting, in the way that you have to know where the deer is going to come from. Mm-hmm. You have to know where the wind blows. You have to know when the deer is going to feed, where the deer is going to feed. What it feeds on, how high up you have to be to not get winded. You have to, and then when you spook the deer, you need to know, or shoot the deer, you need to know where the deer is going to go to find the deer again. And so it's like there's all these different things that you have to know and think about before even coming like going versus a demon, right? Head to head, because the demon, if you don't know all those things, you're not going to shoot that deer, or you're not going to recover the carcass.
And even more, to that point is, if you are tracking a deer and you come across some bear prints, the entire expedition changes. Your entire knowledge base. If you see wolf tracks, if you see boar prints, knowing what tools you have and whether they can handle those things. It's a good allegory for if you're going to fight demons. I do not suggest it.
Yeah. I mean, and something that a lot of people forget too is that demons don't just exist in the Catholic religion
absolutely.
And stuff like that. So a lot of times demonologists are studying all demons, because there are so many. A good book to look into is the Encyclopedia of Demons. I have it. It's great. And it literally talks about demons from all sorts of cultures and religions, and very niche ones too.
It's very true, because And we use the word demon a lot, but the truth of the matter is that we're not talking necessarily about, a horned entity that is, pitchforked. And we are looking at a classification of spirit that the word demon fits. Because, every culture has them, and they're just basically the explanation of something dark and sinister that they encountered and had a very specific pattern of behavior. The Oni of Japan are very fierce and scary and frightening, and we hold them as demons. We'll call them demons, Tengu, and the same thing. You go to every culture, they will have an entity that embodies the dark thing that you encounter, and those are all demons, absolutely, across the line. And even in religious studies, they try to bridge, the demons of other cultures into so that when you're classifying them, you're like, oh well, this demon is a rage. It is about inciting rage. It is looking to feed on you. And then when it all distills back down, you realize that there is a similarity in what they are trying to achieve.
Sure.
They may go about it differently. They may have different, modes, methods, and appearances. But in the end, what they're trying to achieve is interesting because it's usually not like devour the soul and hurt the person. It is usually corruption. It is about the corrupting of a spirit. And that is also why children are so susceptible to demon assault, because the level of corruption is greater with the less, sins on your soul.
Yeah.
All right. Cara Delos, last question. Cara Delos asks, it's a good end cap question. Do you feel like dowsing rods are a reliable tool to communicate with spirits?
It's kind of like it can be. They are so tricky because if you are a shaky individual, you could very easily go and be like, and it'll go like that, and you'll think that's an answer, but really you're just a jittery person. You can use them as like a good starting point to like see like maybe something's there, maybe I'm communicating with something, but I would definitely follow it up with something else.
And it's it is tricky. I do like dowsing rods for their interactiveness.
Yeah, it's
it
fun.
is a very interactive thing. And one of the things that people always forget about dowsing rods, and it comes from the very name itself, is that it was a means to find water underground. You used to walk around and wait for the sense of the water underground. And it was a very useful tool in that aspect. But the question was, well, how does it know? How does it know? Well, what it knows is our innate ability to detect things, but not ever feel it. We are incredibly sophisticated machines. That is why a Ouija board works. That is why a pendulum works. You can't really hang a pendulum on an inanimate object and expect it to do what it does when you're holding it in your hand. So it derives itself from the idea that there are innate knowledges inside of us that can be accessed, and a tool like a dowsing rod, a pendulum, or things like that rely on our physical contact with the tool to propagate whatever information is available.
Absolutely. So, I mean, definitely take it with a grain of salt.
All of it is kind of grain of salty.
Yeah, exactly. But, follow it up with something else and see if you're getting similar answers. And then that is a good point to go from. But don't use it as just like your soul, like, oh, well, the dowsing rod said that it's over there. And so it must definitely be over there, because you could also just be looking in that direction and subconsciously going like, oh, it's over there.
Absolutely. And that's the definitive truth of all of it. Any divining tool, the margin of error is within us, within how we interpret and how we choose to accept and distribute the information that we receive from these tools. So, as a tool in your toolbox, at the very least, it's entertaining. Mm-hmm. At the very most, it can help you suss out areas of high, paranormal energy.
Absolutely. But All right. Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much for all the good questions. You always come through. Really interesting questions. We'll definitely watch 28 Days so we can have some more discussion, because I think there was probably 7 questions about 28 Days in there.
It looks like a very interesting show. Certainly.
Yes. So we'll definitely get back to that. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching. If you do want to follow us on TikTok, you can find us under The Savannah Underground. You can find us on Instagram under The Most Haunted City on Earth. You can also become a Parajunkie over on our Patreon. And make sure to go check out some merch if you haven't already done so. So with that, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And stay spooky, y'all.